Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our third webcast. We're super excited for this topic. We're so lucky to have Stellene Volandes here with us today. She is a renowned jewelry author, editor, lecturer. Hopefully you've seen some of her amazing talks at the 92nd Street Y. And she's the editor-in-chief of Town & Country. I mean, what magazine talks about jewelry better than Town & Country? So thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you. Oh, look at this, my Instagram.
Here it is.
Updated this morning with our new cover, our cover with Gwyneth Paltrow, what broke this morning. And, you know, it's an issue that was sent to the printer during those sort of last semi-normal days in New York. I wrote my editor's letter, which is always the last to go. I wrote it the day the theaters went dark. So you get a sense of sort of but I hope it brings joy and beauty into people's homes, as Town & Country always strives to do. But definitely. In this picture, I love this picture. Is amazing for many reasons. It's at Sotheby's last year when those David Webb earrings that are similar to Jackie Kennedy's David Webb earrings in that amazing photo of her sitting with the Duchess of Alba.
Yes.
So Frank Everett, who you did a talk with, I think, last week at Sotheby's, is so wonderful about sharing the joy of jewelry, and he encourages anyone at a preview to try things on, which I know you do.
That's the best part.
On Madison too. I love that so much. As I was trying these on, though, Mark Emanuel came into Sotheby's.
Oh, of course.
The owner of David Webb. And so really, I don't know if you knew that, but this moment, there are other pictures of me with Mark and Frank on this day.
Perfect. Well, it's jewelry magnetism. I think it just draws you in, right?
Yes, for sure.
So just a little housekeeping for everyone tuning in. There is a chat box to chat amongst yourselves, and then there's also a Q&A box. If you submit questions throughout our talk, then we'll get to them in the last 10 minutes. But otherwise, we're just going to walk through these slides and talk about amazing jewelry. So I'm going to situate us a little bit. This is a brief history of David Webb in case anyone hasn't tuned in before. David Webb founded his business in 1948. He was born in 1925, came from Asheville, North Carolina, charming Southern gentleman coming to the city, really finding his own footing in the late 40s, early 50s. Throughout the 50s, he was really providing your iconic gold and diamond jewelry for the women of the city. But then in the 60s and 70s, you get the great, bold enamel and the colors, the coral, all these things that we come to know David Webb so much for. In the archive, we have so many materials that we don't even know what to do with. We've got 40 to 50,000 renderings and sketches, magazine editorial tear sheets. It just goes on.
I think it's important also to remember that these archives and the David Webb workshop are right above the store.
Yes.
On Madison. And I think that is a remarkable thing to realize that history surrounds you in that store and that the art of making jewelry is right in that store.
Absolutely.
The workshop.
We can call it the web shop. That's a good name.
Is such a rare thing to have the artisans and the craftsmen making those pieces by hand right above where you are sort of trying them on and buying them. It really doesn't exist anymore.
No, and to be able to bring a client through if they want to see, things being made, or if we have questions with the foreman, it's so right at hand. And it's just we couldn't ask for more to be able to have that level of high touch,
Yes. I think it's also when we talk about David Webb starting the business in 1948, I think we also have to sort of situate that a little bit. 1948 is sort of very soon after the war.
Absolutely.
And was, first of all, marked by the return of yellow gold, very much, which is such a David Webb signature, because platinum was deemed an essential metal and was banned from any sort of non-military use during the war. So the palette jewelers had to work with shifted, and you begin to see after the war, they continue to use this really bold yellow gold.
Yes.
And you also, I think, especially in David Webb jewelry, sense the celebration in those designs of a world sort of coming out of this really dark period.
Yeah.
And David Webb is an American jeweler, and that is remarkable. And also his designs are full of exuberance and joy. And I always think that starting the business right after the war ends sort of began it on that footing, and it has never stopped. You cannot go into David Webb or wear David Webb and not feel like, you know, life is a banquet and most people are starving to death, right? You want to experience life and celebrate.
Yeah, we there's a great story from a past client who, you know, she was talking about the same thing you're talking about, and I think her quote was like, you have to have courage to wear David Webb. And you do. I mean, it really emboldens you and puts you out there.
There is nothing timid about David Webb jewelry.
Exactly.
Nothing timid, which is why I love it so much.
Us as well. So this image is one of my favorites from the archive. It's a Life magazine thing, editorial from 1952. And only, I think, a few of the rings are David Webb, but, you know, we think of all these great female names associated with the brand, like Jackie Kennedy, Elizabeth Taylor, Doris Duke, like the icons that we all know. And this sort of situates us right there with people thinking in that same mindset. But there's so many like great male names and great men in jewelry moments too. And it's only...
Also, I have to say, one of my favorite things to Google is David Webb ads.
Yes.
The advertising campaigns throughout and to this day, they always took risks. They always really, it was about personality of the jewelry, but also really big personalities and the colors, and there's so much wit to them also.
Yes. We like to be cheeky. You're very right.
Yeah. And a snake, which I mean, when you think of jewelry and you chart sort of the history of jewelry, why are snakes in almost every single chapter of jewelry history? There is some sort of snake symbolism, and you know, the idea of a snake as renewal is a powerful one, and I think actually it's sort of a comforting thing to even think about now, right? A snake is sort of its power and protection, but it's very much about transformation and revival and renewal, which I think every chapter in history has gone through a period where that is needed. Definitely.
I know you've written about men in jewelry, and that's a topic that fascinates you. I think it was in December, Town and Country, that you really dove into it. And we've been looking through our archive as well. And this image, it's a editorial from Esquire, I think, in the late 60s.
I love that.
And it's just so kind of sexy, and you know, it's not necessarily a man wearing jewelry, but to me, it's like the bridge between you know, this moment and men being around jewelry, and you know, to have the David Webb bracelet on the model's arm there is really
right. And that, you know, that sort of touch of gold. Think about the image without it, right? It sort of is that touch, and who knows? Maybe he wants to. He's grabbing her hand to take her bracelet.
You're right. Very possible.
I've never seen this.
Oh my gosh, these are so great. I forget which magazine this ran in. It's a James Moore shot. They're like this big. They're David Webb objects, and sometimes they were lighters. You'd like press the cabochon stone, the head would flip open. They're solid gold animals, all hand textured. There could be a lighter or a clock or something inside. They're like the perfect sort of masculine object to have. You know, if we're traveling.
And that's such an important jewelry tradition that I don't think many people know about. The idea of creating jeweled objects, whether they be, you know, cigarette holders, or, you know, beautiful sort of lipstick cases, or just gorgeous, if you think of sort of mystery clocks and the jewels that are in those, and these beautiful sort of objets to have on your desk or by your bed. It's, you know, stones are powerful, and so to have them sort of surround you not only wear them, but to have them surround you in your home is, I don't know, I want jeweled objects to come back
too.
when all this is over.
This is a fabulous moment too. There was a fashion show that happened for charity, and I want to read the quote here because it says, the two items of beachwear startled the Black Tie Society audience, and the guy who's sort of opening his jacket, it was like a Nehru coat that had all these mirrored little like sequins on the inside and on the bikini bottom too. But then it says, jeweler David Webb submitted an outfit featuring 3 solid gold belts that are now worn with bell-bottom tiger skin trousers. So the guy with the tiger print pants, those are all David Webb gold belts.
Amazing.
This is a sketch from the archive that sort of shows one of the gold belts that he did. And, you know, I'm going to plug Tiger King here a little bit because that's like such a Tiger King moment with those pants.
Very Joe Exotic.
And so there were belts for women as well. It was a unisex moment for David Webb. He's got...
And, you know, I think when we talk about men in jewelry, you also see that the sort of traditional ideas of how to wear jewelry get expanded, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of wearing a jeweled belt is not something we do often, but you do sort of begin to experiment more, and you should with jewelry. I think the intimidation factor with jewelry is still high, as much as we both try and conquer it.
Yes.
And I think I love seeing this because it encourages people to sort of use jewelry any way you want to.
Yeah, totally.
And to have fun with it, especially something like David Webb. There is joy in that jewelry. There is sort of an arched eyebrow in some of it. There's wit and whimsy, and it should be worn with that in mind.
And no gender rules, honestly. I mean, if a man wanted to wear a big hammered gold cuff, why not? I mean, I feel like that's super applicable to people self-expressing in the 60s and 70s.
And also, you know, I mean, this has sort of been my battle cry for a few years, but men have historically been the greatest collectors of jewelry.
Right.
And for many centuries, they were also great wearers of jewelry. You know, think about Henry VIII. King Charles I was never without a pearl earring. He actually died with it on.
Wow.
Think about the Maharajas and that great tradition of jewelry and the great jewels that were commissioned during that time.
Absolutely.
You know, J.P. Morgan, great collector of jewelry. And I think now that sort of moment in history is repeating itself, which
definitely.
But the idea that men and jewelry is a new idea is you know, is not right. And I think we sort of have to always remind people that men have always worn jewelry, and during some periods in history they wore a lot of jewelry. Definitely. Oh, these are great.
This is so fabulous. The name of the article alone, the hippies necklace takes trip uptown.
You know what that sounds? That sounds like a Town and Country.
It does. It does.
Get ready.
This is from 1968. It's going through all these different jewelers who are providing jewelry for men. So you have a big Cartier chain there. You've got Arthur King up in the top, and then on the bottom is a David Webb Maltese cross with a gold chain. I love that they're all wearing turtlenecks. That's a theme throughout this, so everyone hold on. But then there's a quote from Walter Hoving, who was the chairman of Tiffany at the time, and he says, "If we know a man is buying a necklace for himself, we will refuse to sell it." So it's like Tiffany's holding out. Tiffany doesn't want men to buy diamond ring. This is from 1968. I'll send it to you later, but it's so funny.
You know, Walter Hoving did write one of my favorite essays. Came with a Tiffany Blue book a little bit earlier, and it was the title of the essay is "Can Good Taste Survive in America?"
Yes.
And it's one of my favorites. I reference it a lot.
But you know, you're just mentioning Henry VIII and like all these men who are wearing like big medallions and chains and pendants, and like here it is. This is a moment in the 60s. And that sort of leads me to one of my favorite stories here. This is an exclusive. No one knows this story yet, so we are debuting this story. This is a necklace that we currently have in the David Webb Museum collection. As you know, sometimes we buy back things. And this particular necklace just happened to walk in the door one day, and we sort of knew the history of it, so we jumped on it. I've included the drawing here, original rendering there. So it's all textured gold. It's got a lapis, like a fluted lapis section in the center, some diamonds around it. But it's the same sort of necklace, like a very traditional sort of masculine necklace. This image, which we used
this image is one for the ages.
It's everything.
There has to be some story behind it.
Well, here it is. So this image ran in Vogue in 1968. It was an article all about mustaches, which is hilarious in and of itself.
Yes.
Salvador Dali, Sonny Bono, turtlenecks again, the black turtleneck returns.
Yeah.
But every single one of those necklaces and chains is a David Webb necklace. Sonny's wearing like 3 different sort of versions of a really intricate chain. And then Dali has a pearl necklace, a gold chain, and then the lapis necklace. So that was 1968.
Oh, wow.
Later, it's sold to Arnold Scazzi, who, you know, people in the fashion world might know. Arnold Scazzi is a great fashion designer. Here he is. This was an image in like a Denver newspaper or something. He's wearing it under his suit, his polka dotted suit and tie. But then on the other side, you have Barbra Streisand going to the Oscars. And that look was designed by Scazzi.
Right, that famous look, because it was all see-through.
Yes.
So
yes.
It was quite a shock at the time.
You can't really see it in that photo, but in this one, you can very much see that at the Oscars, he's wearing that necklace under his tux. Yeah.
Oh, I have never seen these images. This is incredible.
So good.
You know, and I think what's interesting is we have talked a lot about how now on the red carpet, there is hardly a man without some jewelry on.
Right.
You know, if you looked at this award seasons between the Golden Globes and the Oscar red carpet, every single man had something on.
You're right.
But we have not gotten really to medallions yet.
Well,
and I think that's our new goal. That's our new goal.
I agree.
You're bringing medallions back to men's black tie.
Yes.
Because if you look at this, it's just, I mean, it's perfect.
Oh, yeah,
I love, one of my holy grails, you know, of course, is a David Webb totem necklace.
Yes, I do know.
But a David Webb pendant is also right there, along with that tree of life.
Yes, that tree of life is in the same sort of vein of like a chest plate, you know, like a really strong, powerful.
Right. Well, I mean, David Webb was very inspired by sort of very early jewelry and a lot of tribal jewelry and Greek and Roman jewelry. So the idea of it as sort of amulet and protection and a chest plate, there is something to all David Webb pieces that, as much as there's wit and whimsy, there is a little bit of there's armor to them too. You know, they're strong, and you feel strong wearing them.
And this is a strong necklace. Like you can take the pendant off. Of course, it becomes a brooch. You know, he thought of everything.
Is that in the store? Is that in the store now?
It's in our museum collection vault.
Okay. All right. Well, I have to come in and see it.
Of course. And I will admit to wearing the brooch out once. So it's had its day.
You wear brooches beautifully, and you wear them often.
I do. I try.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to transition a little bit to cufflinks, which, you know, are of course an important part of David Webb and the male story at David Webb.
Yes.
This particular story is wonderful because this is from the Mrs. Richard Burton file at the David Webb archive.
Hold on. Go back. File is Mrs. Richard Burton.
Yeah, so you can see it sort of down on the bottom of the drawing in black. It's in beautiful pencils. It's Mrs. Richard Burton, very particularly that. You know, other people might know her as Elizabeth Taylor.
Yeah.
When she was AKA. When she was in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, the movie, she had these pieces made as custom gifts for the cast and crew. So the drawings that you see over on the side, those are David Webb's hand sketches. So he would sort of draw with pencil and figure out what the design would look like. And then the black is hand painted with gouache. So those were like the client presentation drawings. But handwritten, you see like 8 pairs, 13 pairs. So those are out there in the world to the cast and crew of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Do you still make any cufflinks like this?
Yes, we do. So, I mean, here's an Instagram shot from the last year, and you see the little wolves on the side. We still make them.
Oh, that's so, what a great thing to give any sort of actor or anyone sort of Broadway linked. You're giving me giving me ideas.
No, that's perfect.
There was supposed to be a really amazing production of Virginia Woolf on Broadway.
I had tickets. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it got postponed, but
Right.
I am hoping we see it at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that idea that she gave it to all the cast. What a wonderful tradition.
There's 13 pairs of them out there, so I don't know. I'm putting the call out. If anyone has one of those original pairs, we'd love to see them and talk about it. But
yes, as would I.
Yeah. This moment,
iconic.
Super iconic.
Absolutely iconic.
Steve McQueen, the first man on a Harper's Bazaar cover, and very much, this isn't necessarily men wearing jewelry, but it's men adjacent to jewelry, and that's one step closer to where we need to be.
Right. Well, and it also goes back to that Esquire shot at the beginning.
Yes.
You think about these moments without the jewelry.
Yep.
And it's a totally sort of an image that's cute, but the jewelry makes it iconic here.
Right. So I think all the bracelets on the original shot, those were Van Cleef bracelets, I think, and then
yes.
Harper's Bazaar redid
the couscous bracelets, I think.
Yes. So the other images, Sting and Alan Cumming, those are from a few years ago. Harper's was obviously inspired by it and redid it. And there's some David Webb in these shots that you've got the, I'm going to use my cursor here. You've got the nail bracelet here, and then some, the double-headed Macara there, and a turquoise and black enamel bracelet.
Well, I mean, I think if you look at that image of Alan with those bracelets, you also see such a strong David Webb story, because you see the enamel, you see the hard stones like the turquoise, like the lapis. Right. I think I see some malachite there. No one uses hard stones like David Webb.
That's true.
And the boldness, first of all, of using them in the 70s when, the sort of the reign of emeralds, sapphires, diamonds, and rubies, that's really what people thought of as jewelry. And he really challenged that with things like the Totem Necklace that were tiger's eye and malachite and lapis.
Yes.
And you really see that. And he put such wild colors together. That's
movie combination.
Essential David Webb.
Yes. So speaking of the nail collection, I wanted to sort of go into this because this came out in the early 70s, and it was originally thought of as a unisex line. I mean, we have the original style cards, and they're handwritten like unisex men's, women bracelet. I wear the twisted nail cuff almost every day, get compliments on it all the time. Ignore the huge diamond ring, or don't ignore the huge diamond ring.
That's gorgeous.
That's great. That's from Siegelson.
Oh, that is gorgeous. I think what's interesting too about the nail is I love the nail, and Aldo Cipulo, who created the nail at David Webb, of course, is sort of one of the great pioneering jewelry designers of the sort of later 20th century.
Absolutely.
And what was so revolutionary about the nail also was it was meant to be worn not only unisex, but it was meant to be worn every day.
Yes.
And that is a real shift in jewelry history. Jewelry was thought of, you think of the jewelry of sort of the late 50s, and it's really Hollywood jewelry, right? It's high glamour, and you think of sort of Joan Crawford. And then in the sort of late 60s, early 70s, as mood shifts, as sort of, the whole country begins to sort of break down tradition, the idea of wearing, what was called ready-to-wear jewelry, or jewelry you could wear every day, it was revolutionary. And this nail bracelet is really a part of that, that total shift in jewelry history.
Agreed. This is a page from a lookbook from 1971 that sort of shows the breadth of the collection at the time. You've got the twisted nail as like a link bracelet. You could have the cuff link, sort of the more cuff-like bracelet, the ring, and up in the top right, you've got different sort of nails, like a railroad spike nail or something.
Yes, yeah. And the nail too is very much in the David Webb style. It's a little chunky, and it's in that gorgeous brushed gold. That's such a signature. That he was inspired really by very early jewelry and by sort of Greek and Roman. Would take this whole, if I could, I would buy this whole entire page.
Yes.
It is so my kind of jewelry.
Totally.
I just love everything about it.
Yes.
And there you go. You see, there's sort of that weight, that sort of David Webb signature, obviously the brushed gold, that sort of signature yellow, but it's gutsy jewelry, you know? I mean, a stylist once asked me to get her jewelry that had guts.
Yeah.
And, you know, at first you think, what? And then I thought, oh, David Webb.
Oh,
right? And she was thrilled.
Thank you very much. You know, speaking of the lookbooks, the pages, you know, you'd have every season, there'd be, we have them starting in the early 70s in the archive. And every season there's like one for May and then one for fall and one for Christmas.
Yeah.
You'd have like 10 pages of earrings, necklaces, rings, sort of these merchandise pages. But then you get to the back and it was always like 2 pages of men's. And I love them.
Bracelet on the bottom with sort of a crab on the end.
So those are actually belt buckles. They're like zodiac belt buckles. You see you can, you know, see the
oh yes, yeah,
the sliding part that would like connect to the leather, and then you've got the crab that's got the piercer through the leather, and then the striped thing above the Gemini. That's a enamel money clip.
Do you still make belt buckles?
We have a few on request if people want to see them. We don't necessarily put them out all the time, but we do have some. Yeah.
That's great. Well, and I guess with the workshop upstairs, obviously the sort of the idea of commissioned pieces
exactly
is still alive and well at David Webb.
Exactly. Everything's special commission if you want it to be.
I've tried on all the pieces actually.
Totally. I mean, hammered gold is super masculine. The zodiac pendants, you know, totally feed into the like the medallion moment as well, because all those brooches can be pendants too. Let's see, I think these are that's a Taurus belt buckle. Those images were in our book, and then the little lion is a lighter. The mouth flicks open and you can light. The belt buckle here is a Aries ram. I'm only going to briefly comment on the fact that it says Hefner on that drawing.
Oh my gosh.
We don't actually know if it's Hugh Hefner's commission or not. I would have to.
Well, we need to find out what his birthday was.
You're right. That's a good point.
That's, you know, detective.
And there was one image that I wanted to include in this, but I didn't know if I should. It was from Playboy. It was like the one time David Webb was in Playboy, and it's amazing. I'll have to send it.
You have to do that on Instagram.
Oh, I don't know.
Can you sort of talk about David Webb and the Zodiac, because that's come up a few times?
Sure. It's, you know, I feel like every house in the 60s or 70s had like a huge Zodiac collection, and David Webb was no different. I mean, he did so many different types. So there's these that are a little more sculptural and figural, and then like the bowl here is from a different series that everything is sort of this plaque, like a very rectangular plaque, sort of a little more, I don't know, like rough hewn in style. There were enamel rings. There were brooches that were not so gold and diamond heavy. They were more, you know, enameled and encrusted with gemstones. We just recently, for our museum collection, we purchased a Taurus brooch that's all beautiful enameled and with like a big headdress of stones. So, you know, there's so many different, like, I don't know, sort of mini collections of Zodiac pieces that he did throughout the 60s and 70s.
And are there current pieces in the collection with a Zodiac connection?
A few here and there. We don't have like a full, here's the 12 set. You know, it's an idea that we're thinking about.
I would love that.
Yeah, but you know, someone.
Yeah, I'm a Leo.
Oh, good. We'll make a note.
But you have lots of lions, so I'm taking care of it anyway.
We do have a lot of lions. Let's see.
That is really something. I mean,
and speaking of special commissions, this is my hand and my personal ring. I'm wearing it right now. It's I sourced the ancient coin, and then we made a mounting for it. And
that's beautiful. Does that happen often in the workshop where someone brings in a stone or an artifact?
Absolutely. There's a long history of that, and we still do that today if people want special commission pieces. The other images, those are part of our motif collection, and those are all pieces worn by a man, a salesman of ours, and he wanted the diamond ring with it's black enamel all around it.
The people, the men and women who work at the David Webb Madison Avenue store are the most wonderful, and talk about sort of sharing the joy of jewelry. they are just like beacons of light.
Yes,
I love them so much. And this arrow is, the diamond arrow is a lapel pin.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
You know, I think going back to sort of what we saw as far as a trend this year, the lapel pin, I'd be surprised sort of in the red carpets that we'll see sort of in the future if there are any lapels without a pin.
Yes.
I do think that has shifted completely. And, you know, you think of Timothy Chalamet and that gorgeous ruby piece, or Billy Porter at the Globes, I think it was, with that gorgeous diamond dragonfly brooch. I really think that the lapel pin is the new cufflink.
Yes.
Right? Where I think sort of men were very comfortable wearing, you know, jeweled cufflinks. And I do think now the lapel pin is just as much a part of a black tie uniform as anything.
Absolutely. I feel like cufflinks don't get seen so much on a red carpet. You know, we dressed Neil Patrick Harris when he hosted the Oscars, and he wore David Webb cufflinks the whole time, but no one really knew. So, you know, you need the lapel pin.
Yeah,
you're right.
You do.
And then medallions.
A little something, you know, just a little something. And often they're wonderfully symbolic, and they have, you know, they're figurative, a lot of them.
True.
And so they could be good luck charms, or whatever, you know, event you're going to, you can sort of, it's almost like sort of dressing a little bit in costume, right? You have a little bit of a nod to the event or something that's being celebrated.
Absolutely.
I remember this morning I posted this.
Yes, I wanted you to have a moment to talk about it, because there's your post about it, and
Will's story. Yes, contributing editor Will Kahn, who I was just sort of texting with, actually. This was wonderful. And if we're talking about supporters of men's jewelry, Marc Jacobs is an amazing collector of men's jewelry. And if you follow him on Instagram, is such a supporter and wears it so beautifully, and has really important pieces. And these were wonderful cufflinks that he wore to his wedding. And again, sort of this idea of a cufflink that is a figure or a symbol that means something. You know, David Webb, that was, you know, that's what he always did, and that's what David Webb continues to do. They're figures, they're symbols. So you really can, you know, we sort of often talk about saying it with jewelry. You really can with this jewelry.
And, you know, you mentioned him being a big supporter, and we've noticed too, I mean, his Instagram of late has been amazing with his pearl necklaces, all of his bracelets. I mean, he's fabulous. I'm obsessed with him.
I love it. No, and it's important jewelry. It's important jewelry, and he wears it and loves it. And it's just about keeping joy and beauty in the conversation as much as we can.
Absolutely.
You know, I think it's really important. I remember this too.
This was one of our most fun moments in the last year, I think. You know, the Met Gala last year was all about camp.
Yes.
And RuPaul was a secret sort of attendee. I don't think anyone really knew he was attending until he showed up. But we had a great relationship with his stylist, and we had an opportunity to have him get dressed at David Webb. So we were like, yes, we're doing this.
Oh, that's right. That's the showroom.
That's the showroom. We were all helping.
Also, the showroom is so beautifully decorated.
Yes.
And when you go upstairs, I think it's Katie Ritter, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
And you go upstairs and you feel like you are in the most glamorous living room there could possibly be. And the colors also reflect so many of the colors that are in the David Webb palette.
Yeah.
You know, and here you see, what's that center stone of the necklace?
I think it's rubellite.
Okay, it looks like rubellite, which is such a gorgeous stone. When it's good quality rubellite, it has like this, it's fuchsia, you know, it almost looks like it's on fire.
Well, it went perfectly with this, you know, pink zebra stripe suit. And, you know, thinking back to Skazi wearing that hint of the medallion under his tux with the bow tie, here's this perfect placement of the necklace under the big sequin bow tie for campy Met Gala.
Right, and you have turquoise.
Yep. Turquoise to go with the The stripes, yep.
Like that ring. Wow.
And then the other
and
ring.
I mean, we're also, if we're talking about signatures, cocktail rings are one of your great signatures. I mean, we saw that in the advertisement you showed from the very beginning, but we see it here again.
Exactly. And of course,
yes,
Jordan Roth.
He's wearing a totem.
Full circle, the
He's
turtleneck.
Wearing a totem.
Yep. He said this was his Martha Graham moment, so perfect.
Well, the Totem Necklace, I think, is one of the most remarkable pieces of jewelry of the 20th century because, first of all, it came out of a moment of crisis, which I think right now, you know, we also have to think about sort of how this all will impact sort of the arts and design and what will come out of it. This came out of a different kind of crisis. It was a financial crisis of the 70s, and David Webb's clients still wanted big jewelry, but didn't want sort of anything that could be very easily seen as being too sort of ostentatious. And he started combining hard stones that no one knew really what they were. Right. You know, it was like this green stone, it was malachite, and it was certainly valuable. But he started combining all these things and hung them from cords or wire. Yep. And so people started wearing these great totem necklaces in a way to be discreet, although there's nothing discreet about a totem.
No, and they're so personal. They're so like, each one is unique. Every time we've produced one, I feel like
I love them so much.
Me too. This sort of connects. One of the bracelets that Jordan's wearing is the Bastille cuff, coming back to hammered gold again. Yes. And this is actually an image from Town and Country. I think it's
it was a piece I wrote actually very early in my very early Town and Country days.
Oh wow!
And it was about the importance of the handmade in America.
Yeah, there it is. And that man hammering was actually one of our workshop guys, and he's got the cufflinks, he's texturing the gold. I mean, it's full circle.
I love this story.
Yeah.
I love this story.
This is this is amazing. I mean, this could be a whole talk in and of itself. Yeah. It's the Oriental Ball from the late 60s. You've got Oscar de la Renta on the far left, Baron de Reed, Helene de Rothschild, and then the other gentleman is Valerian Rybar, and he was David Webb's interior designer, did a lot of his shops and his homes. But all of those necklaces, except for Helene, those are all David Webb necklaces, and then the Maltese cross on Valerian Rybar's turban is of David
Levi,
Webb.
when does this happen?
It's either 68 or 69. I can't quite recall.
Because I think we'll all want to Google it.
Yeah, it was in Paris. You know, it's in the like the black and white ball, like all these fancy dress balls.
Fancy dress balls. No, and the idea of you're at a fancy dress ball, which is a costume ball, and everyone is wearing real jewelry.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
What do I want to dress up as for Halloween, and what David Webb necklace can I use to wear with it?
Exactly.
Right? And then here we have men in these medallion necklaces, and they look gorgeous.
They look amazing. Like all the brocades, everything is just layered up. It's fabulous. This is sort of an ongoing project for us as well, but I couldn't not talk about Frank Sinatra with men in jewelry. So here we are. These are two of his sketches that he had done. We're still researching like where these pieces could be or who they were for.
And was he having these created for his wife or for himself to wear?
That's the thing.
Okay.
We're not
because there are some amazing pictures of him in sort of very sort of heavy gold medallion necklaces.
Right.
Which I love. So it wouldn't be, and Sammy Davis, who of course was part of the Rat Pack, was a great lover of jewelry.
Yes.
And wore very serious, Van Cleef pieces. So I wonder if he had some influence. That necklace, you sort of can see them wearing, sort of singing with Dean Martin.
Absolutely.
And at the Tropicana or something.
And these pieces are both very masculine. I mean, like the Maltese cross, that can, that
totally gorgeous.
That fits into all the themes of the turtleneck and the medallion. And then I think these are like pieces of 8 or doubloons or something. They're like big silver coins.
Also, if you look at that Maltese cross, the hand crafted gold. I mean, to do that is remarkable. I mean, the work on that piece is fantastic.
Agreed. So that's just a sneak peek of something we're working on. I couldn't not put, I mean, maybe this is a little self-indulgent, but I definitely take advantage of being able to try all these things on.
Can you talk about this piece you're wearing with the sort of tan sweater that has a lot of colored stone? I don't think I've ever seen that piece. So I'm going to flip back really quickly just for reference, because it does connect to this. So Marissa Mell on the top there, she's wearing this jeweled belt, right? And you can see it's got like a little bit of a dangling piece down there. So we recreated that piece, and that's what that image is. So it's a long necklace, obviously. It can also be worn as a belt, and then there's sections that come off as bracelets too, because sort of near the back it tapers to be like a smaller sort of section. It's essentially like a thick gold wire that sort of arabesques around, and then each section has like a big center stone, whether it's sapphire, ruby, whatever, and then 4 stones around it. So it's very regal feeling. Like you see sort of where it's positioned on my chest. It probably went halfway down my back on the back side. Right.
So
you can
long.
tell it sort of has, it's quite beautiful, and it seems a little bit flexible. Right?
Definitely, it's super flexible.
Yeah.
So here we've got Maltese crosses. We've got the frog brooch, which is really well known, and then the in the blue sweater, that's a zodiac symbol. It's like a Libra symbol.
Okay. What sign are you, Levi?
I'm a Virgo, very much a Virgo.
Okay. Opposite of a Leo.
Yeah, well, that's okay. This sort of tells the story of, like, in the archive, we have so many drawings of things that have never been produced. So this butterfly, you can see the rock crystal section in the center is exactly the same.
It's incredible.
Yeah. So this is sort of how we get to play, right? We can find a drawing and say, okay, here's the core of this piece. Here's the David Webb DNA. Let's sort of embellish or go further or reimagine what could happen. And
can I ask you, the blue is enamel, or
it's lapis? It's a carved lapis section around the.
So in this, I see the lapis. There's rock crystal. There's opal.
Yep. There's yellow diamonds, and then there is a thin, I'll use the cursor, there's a thin bit of black enamel around here as well. So
that's extraordinary. Yeah. Just extraordinary.
It really is. I wanted to end with a few pictures of David Webb himself in the workshop, just because they're very masculine and 70s.
Yes.
And this is one of the last photos taken before he died in 1975.
And where was the shop at this point?
This was 57th Street.
57th and Madison? Or
I think it was 57th and 5th. It was close to Bergdorf's. It was like right on that block.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. No, I remember it when it was sort of on Madison and like 62nd or so. That's when I first got acquainted with it. And now, of course, it's right next to the Apple store. And I love walking by and walking in. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I think we're going to transition to a few of the questions that have been submitted. Let's see. This one's from Kurt. He says, I feel a strong personal connection to my mother's and my father's jewelry ever since I was young. I wonder if you could talk a bit about the emotional connection to pieces that we seem to develop over time. I'm going to give that one to you.
Okay. Well, I think there are two things. Jewelry is the most intimate art form.
Right.
It is. And so the sort of jeweler's mark is a very profound one. I tell this story often, but I interviewed Marie-Helene de Taillac for my book, and she said that if her craftsmen are in a bad mood, she won't let them work on a piece because she feels like their emotion sort of gets imbued in the piece. And then you also think the pieces that your mother wore, she wore them. They are, it's like when you have a scarf or a sort of sweater from someone you love, when you put it on, you feel them. And jewelry is that. I think you also remember moments, when maybe she was wearing it. And, if it's a bracelet, sometimes you remember how that sounded when she sort of reached out to hug you or picked up the phone. And so there are so many sort of sensory associations with jewelry, but for me, the most profound one is that it is art that we wear
Yes.
on our skin, and that to me is sort of the most intimate and personal way to experience art. And so I think that when you have a piece from someone you love, you are in many ways sort of there. They could not be closer to you than through jewelry.
Agreed. Very well said. So we got this question a few times in different ways, but speaking of men's jewelry, did David Webb have any personal jewelry that he bought or collected? There's a great quote that he put out during 1964 when he was winning the Cody Award, and someone had asked him this at that time, and I think he said something like, does a chef eat his own cooking? And he said, no, he doesn't. Like, he didn't wear jewelry. He didn't.
Really?
He wore like simple gold cufflinks that I don't even think were his own. I think he was a very sort of subdued person. Like, he was gregarious and engaging in person,
Right.
but he was very private. Like, his insurance people didn't want him ever to be photographed, or
Right.
so a lot of the newspaper things you see about him are just like artist sketches or something. So we don't know a ton about his own personal collection, and maybe he didn't have that many.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating.
Let's see. Someone says, I'm fascinated by the male monarch throughout history and their associations with jewels and jewelry. Did specific stones have specific meanings in this context, or was it simply the quantity and size of stone that mattered?
Well, I think it's all of the above. I think that when you look at portraits of monarchs throughout history, look at the stones and then think about what lands had they recently conquered?
Mm-hmm.
What trade routes had they sort of opened up for their empires? How far did their empires stretch?
Right.
And you can sort of, through their jewelry, almost answer all those questions.
Right.
And so, as the Americas begin to be conquered, you suddenly see a lot of pearls, right? Because all those pearls that were found in South America start to get shipped back, and suddenly everyone in portraits is wearing a ton of pearls. And as far as quantity, yes, the more jewelry you had on, the more power you had. It was much later that, if you then look though at early American art, like in Sargent paintings that were very much about sort of the new aristocracy, there's very little jewelry. So it's this shift, sort of then subtlety and discretion begin to sort of suggest class and power and taste.
Right.
But early on, sort of the more you had on, the stronger you were.
Absolutely.
And you see that, think about Catherine the Great and her portraits. Think about Henry VIII. Think about Queen Elizabeth, the Armada portrait.
Mm-hmm.
And the pearls, the amount of pearls that Queen Elizabeth is wearing in the Armada portrait.
Yeah.
That was all about talking about sort of what she had access to,
right,
as far as trade routes and land and resources.
Yeah, they're emblematic of exactly everything that they had.
It's a secret language.
Yes.
But it speaks to their power, and also where it was coming from and how far it stretched.
Exactly. Okay, one final question regarding the Virginia Woolf cufflinks commissioned by Elizabeth Taylor. Are the ones created today any different than the ones that she had created then?
Great question.
Good question. We have all of our original molds at David Webb, so like the form itself hasn't changed or altered in any way, but I think the ones you saw in like our Instagram post had red enamel, whereas the ones that Taylor commissioned maybe had like gray or white enamel or something.
Okay.
So, we'll take liberties like that to sort of switch things up and make them fresh, but otherwise it's exactly the same. So thank you. Good question. Stellene, thank you so much.
Thank you, Levi.
Fabulous.
So much fun.
I loved it.
So much to sort of go and Google now, which I think is what these should all just inspire us to learn more about jewelry and jewelers and the history of it all.
Totally. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. And these will be on YouTube eventually, so stay tuned.
Very good. Thank you, Levi. Everyone have a good day and stay healthy and safe.
Yes. Bye-bye.